All right, I'm Bill Schmidt, and I'm from the Lakehurst Historical Society. Enough said about that for the moment. This little talk is about the Hindenburg. The first thing I want to do is ask you if it's possible that you don't ask your questions until at the end of it. Unless you're like me, and you can't remember your question until the end. And then I will give you an exception, because being like me, I have to give you an exception. So if you have to raise your hand because you might forget it, then ask. Okay, but try not to. The first thing that I need to do is answer a few questions. People will ask me, why was the Graf Zeppelins 126, 127, 128, 130, and 131 called the Graf Zeppelin? Why was that? Well, this gentleman here, his name is Paul von Hindenburg, and he was a pretty famous general in World War I. And when he came back home from the war, the people automatically wanted him to become president or chancellor of Germany. So he became chancellor. And his name is Hindenburg. Okay. But where did this Graf von Zeppelin come from? This gentleman here is Count Friedrich Graf von Zeppelin. He is the inventor of the Zeppelin. So they called it a Graf Zeppelin because he designed it. Now this gentleman here, his name is Hugo Echner. And Hugo Echner started flying as a captain 126. Graf von Zeppelin, or Graf Zeppelin. Okay, so 126 was around the 1911 it started its flights. And he was a captain almost up until just prior to the Hindenburg was built. And when that happened, this gentleman here, he died, but before he died, he asked him to take over his company to run it for him and build more Zeppelins. So he decided he would do that after captaining a lot of the Zeppelins. And this gentleman here, his name is Ernst Lehmann. Now, Ernst Lehmann is the captain of the Hindenburg in 1936. Our flight, the one we're about to get on, is 1937. It's the first flight in 1937. This will be the 11th time that the Hindenburg has gone from Frankfurt, Germany to Lakehurst, New Jersey. We're about to board the 11th flight. Okay. Everything in the air has to have some kind of call sign on it. Every single ship in the air has a call sign. So, 126 was a Graf Zeppelin. 127 was a Graf Zeppelin. 128 was a Graf Zeppelin. Now we get to 129, and Hitler is now about to take, because this guy gave up and was going to retire, so Hitler became chancellor in front of him. And he decided that he would call LZ-129 the Hindenburg after the famous general and the president, previous president. So that's how the Hindenburg got its name, and was different from all the other ones. Now, this is class participation. The D, what does that stand for? Dirigible? Yep, you got it. What does the L stand for? No. Lighter than air. And the Z, of course, stands for Zeppelin. Okay. All right. I've covered most of the questions except for one. On our flight, it's no longer Ernst Lehman who's our captain. Our new captain, his name is Max Pruss. Now, don't worry about Pruss because he was second in command under Ernst Lehman, okay? So he knows what he's doing, but the Fuhrer decides that he's going to send him on our flight to do two things. One, to make sure he does a good job, stays on time, gets where he needs to be. And the second thing he's supposed to do is go to our government and ask for helium to replace hydrogen. Okay. First thing is, in 1927, the Helium Act was passed by our Congress, which said we are not sharing this difficult, renewable product with any other country. Least of all, somebody who we thought was about to start a war with us. Because now, helium doesn't burn, it doesn't explode, it's an inert gas, but hydrogen burns like crazy. So we didn't want to give Hitler anything that would be good for him attacking us. Okay, now, what I'd like you to do is this. How long has it been since you used your imagination? You probably do it every day, right? Imagination? Yeah. See, it's easier for young people to use their imagination than it is for us older people, okay? So what I'd like you to do is try really hard to use your imagination. From right about here over, you're all American citizens. And from here over, we are German citizens. And why am I defining us? Well, we're in Frankfurt, Germany, and we're standing in this airfield, and off in the distance is the Hindenburg that we're about to board. So, when we get over to the table where they're taking our money for our tickets, the half of us that are going back to America only have to pay $400 to get on board the Hindenburg. The half of us that are German citizens are required to pay round trip up front, which is $800. Okay, so does anybody want to say, thank you, Bill, for making us rich people? Okay, I just made us all rich. We're business people, we are in the government, we're rich. Okay. So we're getting up to pay our fee, and on either side of that table, there's a gentleman in a black suit with a black hat, and he is from the SS. And on the other side, there's a plainclothes SS man standing over there too, so that when we Germans get up there, and we say, let's say I came here to marry you, okay? Now, we're going to go back to America, but you're not coming back because I'm married you. But you still have to pay $800. By the way, if that was to be equated into today's money, it would be $6,000. Okay? So, an expensive ride. Okay, now, down from the Hindenburg comes a ladder, and it sets about this high off the ground, and there's a platform under it. And after we paid our fee, got our ticket, we walk up the ladder. The first person we see is a guy in a white coat. And he has got his hand out. What does he want? I just paid $800. You don't want a tip already, do you? You didn't do anything for me yet.
Matches.
Bingo. Matches. Lighters. There are 16 gas cells from the front to the back. And this puppy is filled with 7.4 million cubic feet of hydrogen. Square feet of hydrogen. So, we don't want to be smoking on the Hindenburg, do we? No. So this guy wants our lighters, he wants our matches, and he says to you, you will get this back when you get off. Okay, now we just paid $800 for a 2.5-day trip from Frankfurt, Germany to Lakehurst. And everybody smokes something. Cigarette, cigar. Your grandmother smoked big fat cigars, okay? We're getting on this cigar, this huge 804-foot long cigar, and we're not going to be able to smoke for 2.5 days. Okay, now the next person we see is a guy whose name, hold on a second. Don't fall. Okay. Werner Franz is 14 years old, and he's our cabin boy. So he's the next guy we run into because he wants to take our bags to our stateroom. And our stateroom is consistent of a top bunk and a bottom bunk. There's a ladder to get to the top bunk. There is, by the way, the ladder is made of duraluminum. That's the same steel that the entire inside of the Hindenburg is made out of. Duraluminum. That's so that it will help make it lighter than air because it's a very light steel. If I had a ladder here, I'd let one of you try to pick it up. There's a sink and a writing table and a place to put your clothes on either side. Okay. You know, Captain Pruss, we're starting to put our clothing away, and Captain Pruss calls Werner to the gondola or the control car. And that's a picture of the inside of the control car. Now, he says to Werner, go to the passengers and say, would you like to take, to see the inside of the gondola, how we operate the Hindenburg? Because now we're in the air, okay? And how many people want to go in to see what the gondola looks like? You all want to go, okay. All right. So, as we walk inside, the alarm goes off. Dead center on the gondola is a wheel. And there's an officer standing there operating a wheel. And then off to the left, there's another wheel. And there's an officer there operating that as well. Now, on the water, it might take 7 or 8 days to get from Frankfurt, Germany to America. But on the Hindenburg, as I said, it's only 2.5 days. So this was the best possible way to get from Europe to America. All right. Why were there 2 wheels? Well, there's a rudder back here, and that rudder, when turned by the dead center wheel, would turn right or left. So now you can make right and left turns with that wheel. And the one off to the left, that operates a vane right here, which will allow the Hindenburg to go down or up. But that guy was told that he could not make a move more than 5% up or down. Why would they tell him that? Well, we are passengers on board this thing, and if we're walking to go somewhere, if you went 20% up, you'd be on your butt and rolling. Or we might be sitting at our dinner table and all the plates would fly off your table. So 5% up, 5% down. Now, if you needed to make another move after that 5%, then after leveling off, you could do it again. And one last thing, there's some boxes up at the top here. And on those boxes, there are buttons that number 1 through 16. I told you that there were 16 gas cells on the inside of the Hindenburg, under the frame. When you're going to land, you have these valves at the top of each bag. And when you press the corresponding number, it allows some of that gas to come out so that you become heavier than air when you have less hydrogen inside. Now you start to come, and you would only do this when we get to Lakehurst and we're coming in for a landing. Okay. Now, right about now, somebody will say to me, because really the tickets were billed from Frankfurt, Germany to New York City. Well, how'd that work out? Because we went to Lakehurst, we didn't go to New York City. Well, there's a few reasons why they picked the Navy base to land the Hindenburg. First one is we have something called the Blue Comet that comes right into Lakehurst, okay? And actually, if you go inside Hangar 1, you can see that there are still railroad tracks in there. So that train actually went inside of Hangar 1 and let people off and could get on. If the Hindenburg was inside Hangar 1, they could get right on the Hindenburg. So that's one reason. Second reason is American Airlines built a terminal there. Now you can get off the Hindenburg and get on a plane, and as long as there's a continent for you to fly over, where you could land and get more fuel if you needed it. You could go anywhere you want to. California, Mexico, Canada, wherever you wanted to go. Now, the third reason is something called Hangar 1. Hangar 1 was started to be built in 1919 and was finished being built in 1921. And I told you that the Hindenburg was 804 feet long. This building was 808 feet long. So it just barely fit. It had 6 inches in the front to the door and 6 inches from the back to the door. But you could put 2 dirigibles, the Hindenburg and another Navy ship, inside. By the way, 126 was given to the American Navy because that was included in the war reparations, that because Germany lost the war, that was part of the deal, and they had to give our Navy one of their dirigibles, and they did. That became the Shenandoah. Okay, now, the last reason is, could you see the Hindenburg trying to land in New York City? There was a plan to make the Empire State Building a mooring mast, but the plank was this big and it went to the mast. They were planning on putting stairs in the center of it. Now, how high up is this thing? Because I couldn't walk across from something solid to the Empire State Building without losing my cookies, okay? And on top of that, the winds in New York City would have had you going around in circles like this, now trying to cross that. So that idea was said, no, we don't want to do that. Okay. Now, you know, I mentioned that we weren't going to be able to smoke for 2.5 days. German ingenuity built a room inside that was pressurized so that nothing could leak out and nothing on the outside could leak in. Now we can go in there with our cigars and our pipes and our cigarettes, and the same guy with the white coat comes with an electric lighter and he says, can I light you a cigarette? Can I light you a pipe? Can I light you a cigar, man? Okay, we can smoke. Thank God. Because back in 37, everybody smoked. Okay. Now, oops, upside down. All right, this is A deck, and that's B deck. A deck is where our berth is, the place where we're sleeping, and that's right in the middle of that A platform. Off to the side is a dining area that can hold 50 people at once. By the way, we are 50 passengers on board that day. We boarded, 50 of us boarded.
How many could they hold?
On this flight, they could have.
On any flight, yeah.
Well, I need to differentiate because in 37, they had enough to hold 72 passengers. In 36, they only had enough room to hold 62 passengers. But there was a grand piano in the lounge in 36. They had to remove it at 37 because they added 10 more people, okay? So we have a lounge, we have a writing room, we have a place to eat. And on either side, there's what's called an observation lounge. And that observation lounge, the ledge would hit you right about here, and the window would open up and out, and you could quite literally, because you're only 200 to 300 feet in the air, because they were not allowed to go above 650 feet. That would be their max altitude. You could quite literally do this and say, oh, we're over the ocean right now, there's some fish, I see a shark, I see this, I see that. And at 6:30 in the morning, we started out May 3rd, 1937, it's now May 6th, and we're over New York City. And we were supposed to be at Lakehurst at 6:30 in the morning. But because of bad weather, and there's also another unwritten law that says we'd rather you fly around bad weather than fly through it. So they had to go around all the bad weather. And on top of that, when you're coming this way from Frankfurt to America, there's something called a stiff headwind. And that's, even though there are 4 outboard engines that can do between 65 and 85 miles per hour, that wind blowing against you was slowing you down constantly. So we got over New York City at 6:30. And quite literally, again, there are people who I've talked to at Lakehurst who said, I was in Newark, or I was in Hoboken, or I was, that people on board the Hindenburg, that they were waving at them, and they were waving back, okay? So, about this time, the commander at Naval Air Station Lakehurst calls Captain Prost and says, I can't let you land. Uh-oh, now we're late getting there, and how much later are we going to be now? So he asks, why can't we land? And the commander says, we have heavy lightning, heavy rain, fog, and heavy wind. So I'm making a call that's going to say, you cannot land. So now, even though Captain Prost is not a military guy, but he's still subject to what the military commander is telling him what to do. So he says, okay, what do you want me to do? And he says, you need to go south to Atlantic City along the coast, and then come back to New York City, and then back down to Atlantic City if I don't tell you it's okay. So you got to do that as many times as it takes for me to say that the weather is clear enough for you to land. So he goes all the way down to Atlantic City once, comes back to New York City, and about this time, it's about 6 o'clock, 6:30 roughly, so now it's 12 hours that he's late for the landing. And he passes Lakehurst, and as he gets to Forked River, near Forked River, the commander calls him up and says, conditions have changed. Things are better than they were. Rain stopped, wind is a lot less, so you can make your approach for a landing if you wish. Okay, it's at this point in time that I'm going to, through your imagination, I'm taking us all off the Hindenburg, okay? Because you're nice people. I've been told I'm nice, but I've also been told I'm not so nice. But I'm still getting off with you, okay? So we're on the ground, and we're looking up. And we're in Lakehurst with about 300 other people. It takes 91 military guys to grab the mooring lines, and it also takes another 200 people from Lakehurst, who are citizens of Lakehurst, to help grab those mooring lines. So we're on the ground with them, about 300 total people. And now we're looking up, because he's making his approach back from Forked River, and the first straight line he makes, and this is part of what you're supposed to do. Now, but as he's coming, Ernst Lehman is poking him in the side. Captain Press, okay, he's poking him and he's going, you know, we're 12 hours late. The Fuhrer is not going to like this. Well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is at Lakehurst, there are 72 people waiting to go back to Frankfurt, Germany. And they're all big shots in the government. What's the big deal? Why the big rush? Well, King George VI is having his coronation in England on the 12th. So, all these big shots in the government have to be back to Frankfurt, Germany on the 8th, so that they can find transportation to be in England on the 12th. And if they're not there, Adolf is going to have a stroke. So this Ernst Lehman is poking him, you got, we're late. So because they're late, he starts to do things that I call haste makes waste. Okay? So his first mile and a half, this is what he's supposed to do. He's following the rules. I told you about the buttons and releasing the gas. Well, when you release that gas out of the valve, you're supposed to fly straight for a mile and a half to get all that gas off the skin of the ship. And he does that. Also, you're supposed to make wide turns, not sharp turns like this. Wide, sweeping turns. And he does that on the first turn. Now, he also is still venting hydrogen out of those valves. So he's got to fly for a mile and a half in a straight line. And he's got another turn, which is wide and sweeping. And then he's dumping more gas here, but as you can see, the line doesn't go for a mile and a half. So now he cut the first corner. He vented, but didn't fly for a mile and a half straight. Now he makes the wind shifts, and you're always supposed to keep the ship's nose into the wind. So he makes a very sharp turn. Mistake number 2. Because, see these spoke things that are on the outside of the bag? Can you see them? These are rebar to hold the bag in place. Keep it where it belongs, not flop it around the whole inside of the Hindenburg. So when he makes that fast turn, right about here, he somehow, that rebar, which had gone 62 total flights, I mean, not just to Lakehurst, but to other places like Rio de Janeiro and England, and most of those flights are over salt water. Well, this rebar rusted inside. And when he made that sharp turn, it hit so hard that it broke the rusty rebar. And now it's got jagged edges. So the jagged edges ripped open the back. And at this moment, just before this moment hits place, the mooring lines are dropped from the Hindenburg. The main lines are about so big, and off the bottom there are smaller lines that spread out off the bottom part. And those people that are there on the ground are paid $1 and a ham sandwich to grab those ropes. Pretty good, huh? Okay, and when the rope touches the ground, it starts to rain again. Now the rope gets wet, and the ground has negative charges, and positive charges build up on the skin of the Hindenburg. So 4 minutes after those mooring lines touched the ground, which was about 7:21 p.m., 4 minutes later, the Hindenburg became a huge capacitor. And capacitors have the ability to pull in electricity and also discharge electricity. So the space in between the skin and the duraluminum was close enough that the spark transferred from the skin to the duraluminum. And it happened. It happened everywhere, okay? This entire thing, you could be seen from the ground sparking, sort of kind of like arcs of electricity flying all around. But in this spot where the hydrogen was leaking and the oxygen was mixing, you now have that happen. 34 seconds is not a long time. But here's my last thing that I like to tell people. In our race, there's an incredible will to live. We all have in us an ability to go beyond what we think we can do to stay alive. Okay, so in 34 seconds, this thing is on the ground and it's completely burned up. How many people? There was a grand total of 97 people on board that day, between passengers and crew members. How many people died that day? Does anybody know? 30. Actually, it was 35. That's fake news, okay? The guy didn't do his job too well. And so it was 35 on board that died. And one guy who didn't get his ham sandwich and his $1 died underneath. It fell on him. And there are two trains of thoughts. One is he had a heart attack, because if you're looking up at that coming at you. And the other is he may have run in the wrong direction. In other words, he was closer to getting away from it this way instead of ran the other way. So it fell on him. So now we have 36 people dead. Remember I said there was 300 people on the ground and 97 total people on board. 12 passengers died, 22 crew members died. So that means that 62 people lived. An incredible will to stay alive. Well, we can all sit around and speculate how they managed that. Well, when this started, Captain Pruss noticed that his trim, or level, was beginning to change in the back. It started going like this, and heavier than air back here, and moving towards the ground. So he said, here's what I'm going to do. There was a bag of water in the back that had thousands of gallons of water, and he decided to dump that water, and his thought was, by doing that, he would come back into trim. But at the same time, he had told 6 men who were doing nothing to go up front. That's about 1,200 pounds if you give or take a few. So he figured, okay, this will bring me back to trim. But he didn't realize how much gas was being vented out of there. Now, how do I know that this story is correct? 3 days later, 3 sailors saw the skin on the Hindenburg in this area. It was rippling, like something was pushing on the inside trying to get out. That was the gas. And it was just like a wave. And people could see that the skin of the Hindenburg had charges dancing on it. So, how did so many people get out of there? Come on, Bill. Tell us how so many people got out of there.
Jump out your window.
Well, if I tell you that this was the only form of entertainment, was these windows, and at that moment was the best time to be there because you wanted to see how the Hindenburg was going to land. So a lot of passengers were at these windows. Our cabin boy was part of the 6 men who went forward. And one thing about him is he was a smart lad. He went around before this all started to happen. I'm talking about the year previous, and he started looking for escape hatches. So he said to the 6 men, follow me. A bag of water bursted over their heads when the fire started. And he said, follow me. I know where the escape hatch is. And when he kicked it out, and when it got close enough to the ground, they all got out. When this got close enough to the ground, the people who were near here, this is Werner Derner. He's 8 years old. And Werner and our cabin boy just died recently. One was 2010, the other one was 2015. They lived. So his brother, Mom grabs his brother first, and as they get closer to the ground, remember, it's about 150 feet in the air when that happens. And in 34 seconds, it's now moving towards the earth quickly. So she drops him out. It's the ground. Remember, it's all soft sand over there. And he bounces. Now he gets a few burns, a few scratches, but he's alive. His brother comes down behind him. But the 14-year-old daughter got scared and she ran back to the stateroom, and Dad had to go back to get her. They both died. But Mom, she says, if they made it, I can make it. She jumped out. She lived, but she broke her pelvis. Okay, so, but she's alive. All of these men in this picture here, Captain Pruss went inside the gondola 6 times and removed a lot of people. And a guy named Bull Tobin, who was the chief petty officer in charge of the grounds crew, said, the next time you see Captain Pruss come out of there, don't let him go back in. Why? Because He's the captain. If anybody knows what happened here, it's going to be him. We don't want him to die. Ernst Lehman went to the hospital over in Lakewood. What's the name of that hospital? All Chemical, right? And the next day he died from third-degree burns on his back. Our captain got his nose burned off, but he lived. And most of these men in this picture had scrapes, bruises, and burns. But the bottom line here is they lived. And so you have haste makes waste, and the human race is all built within each one of us to have an incredible will to stay alive. Okay, last thing. It's at this point that I remind you that we are the Lakehurst Museum, and we survive just like you do on donations, except for your grants, and we for some reason we don't do that. But if you can find it, we have a box up over here. You know, a penny is a donation. People say to me, how do you ask for money? I don't. A penny. If you can give me a penny, I'll take it. Because see, that door don't lock. You're getting out of here whether you give me money or not, okay? So, a donation is how we stay, how the Lakehurst Museum stays open. So I ask you that whatever you can give, please put it in that box over there. And I hope you enjoyed the talk. Are there any questions?
Hindenburg crashed in New Jersey or whatever, but like 5 or 6 years before that, there was a durable, the Akron, I believe. And was that a German one as well? And did that just crash or did that?
That was one of the ones that we built. And it crashed in 1933. And that was near the Barnegat Lighthouse. Yeah. But
How did they get it?
inside.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
did they get it?
Well, this. Do you have a house with an attic?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you pull that string, it comes down and you can then go up the steps.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't exactly the same because it's, they can pull a string electrically. The stairs come down to the platform, and here we go.
Did the crew go back to Germany and get their ass kicked by Hitler?
Some of them did go back, and really I don't know if Hitler, I don't think he did anything to them because it really wasn't their fault. It turned out to be a combination of, like I said, the Titanic. How did that sink? Haste. Faster, 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 faster. Okay?
Premise of building this just use it as transportation.
Well, partly some of them were started out as war in World War I. Yeah, and they were probably going to use it, maybe use it in World War II. But primarily these ships were built for passengers, yes. And by the way, I told you that they had built 130, and they were, I forgot to tell you that they were in the process of building 131. And when Herb Morrison saw this, he said, oh, well, the humanity speech came out of him. And I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Could you borrow your microphone?
Ship are just holding it
just enough to keep the person in the flank. Get it started. It's right, and it's right, it's terrible. Oh, my please. It's running, bursting in the flames, and it's falling on the morning path, and all the folks between the this is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 20, 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. It's smoke and it's flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the passengers seething around it. I told you, I can't talk to people and friends around there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it's just laying down fast and floating wreckage there. And everybody can hardly breathe and talking, screaming, lady on the left side.
He walks out of the hangar as this is coming down burning, and "Oh, the Humanity" speech is now immortalized in that film that he took. So now he goes and takes this record that he made, because it wasn't radio live, it was a record, and through the pictures on Movie Tone, anyone who went to a movie saw this. No one is going to pay $800 ever again to get on a cigar that would burn up. Nobody. So, 130 stopped flying. 131 was stopped in its building. And the only people that used dirigibles up until 1965 was our military. That pretty much ends, unless you have more questions.
But we use helium.
We used helium, right? Now, helium, you had to have more helium on board to achieve what the Hindenburg did with at 7,000. You would need 11,000 cubic feet of helium because the lifting power was less than hydrogen. Anybody else? I'm 71 come November, but this was 86 years ago. So, no.
No other, dirigible ever came to Lakehurst again, did they?
What?
Did another dirigible ever come to Lakehurst?
Not with passengers in mind, no.
Just military?
Just military.
But what didn't help the Hindenburg was the coating also. It was highly flammable.
Yes, it was.
It was a coating with dope on it.
That is
It's
correct.
just like an air, lacquer and just flames don't match.
100 over 100, you're right. Yep. Go ahead.
Just a comment, I was born in Point Pleasant, and my older brother was born on December of '36. My mother heard about the Hindenburg coming, so she got my brother and my father in the car and they headed for Lakehurst to watch it land. And they got to about Route 70, or about Route 9, going out Route 70.
Mhm.
And that's when it burst into flames. And they never was able to get to Lakehurst because the thousands of people that were coming to see it, the traffic everything was stopped. So all they saw was just the glow in the sky.
People said that they could hear and see this disaster from Hoboken. People said they could hear it in as far away as Manalapan, okay? It did, but it burned quickly, so the only thing that you would have smelled is the diesel fuel that was burning from the engines, the outboard engines. And there was plenty of that to burn, yeah. Okay.
About taking lighter-than-air balloons into Hangar 1.
All lighter than air balloons?
So I know up into the mid-80s, they were still refitting buildings there.
Well, lighter than air is, there's two classes. One is called rigid, and the other is non-rigid. Non-rigid means that the actual balloon or cell is the balloon itself. All that gas is just pumped inside. And the other is rigid, that's the aluminum structure on the inside with the bags that carry. Now, at that point, they still have rigid, but I would say up until around the early 50s, maybe even 40s, later 40s, Goodyear started with its non-rigid dirigible, which you can see if you go over the seaside. They're dragging advertisements up and down the coast. Go ahead.
Where is your museum located?
300 Center Street in Lakehurst. And that piece of paper that I gave out has an address on it, okay? Anyone wanting to, who isn't doing enough here, who wants to join us over there, you can do that too. There's a piece of paper in there.
If I understand, there's a museum you can go visit on Wednesdays,
Wednesday and Sunday, yes.
which is on the regular.
No, you do not. Just walk in, okay? Any more questions?
How fast did you say that thing went?
Its average cruising speed was between 65 and 85 miles per hour. That's why it only took two and a half days to get there.
Yeah.
When the Queen Mary, if you were on the Queen Mary, it would have taken you at least 5 to 7 days. Yeah. Mhm. Any more?
I have to watch Connor.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You made me feel very welcome, and thank you for listening, okay?